Yo, yo, yo. DJ George Chuck.
Crack a lagging, man.
Hey man. We in
On the
here trying to
road.
make it
On the
happen.
road.
I see you rolling. We're trying to make it happen on this Friday. People don't be confused. Don't feel bad. Your week has not started over. It is Friday, right? It is not Tuesday, but this is a special edition of Nightcap Knowledge. And we wanted to talk about a couple things. We joke around a lot and have a good time, but this is still a show that's rated black and uncensored. Real talk, real issues, real solutions. Um, we just wanted to go over a couple things, because I'm confused about a lot of stuff. And Chuck and I discussed it, reached out to a couple of our good friends, and we're going to have some more folks on the panel to try to help break down some of the stuff we saw. For myself and Chuck, we've been working with youth since we was a youth. So we are very passionate about working with, especially our young black males. And we are looking at a situation that happened um, with the verdict this past, I guess, a couple of hours ago, and trying to understand
Yeah.
a little bit more about it, right? So right now, if you're watching this live, if you're watching the podcast, feel free to share with some friends. Please chime in. Drop your comments in the comment section. If that's something that you feel really passionate about, or you want to bring some light to the subject, if you want to jump on with us, drop us your email address, and we can send you a link and bring you on to talk about it. We have a good friend and attorney, Seneca Tubwell, who is also one of those people's champs that's out here. That he do a lot of work behind the scenes, helping folks, and he can help bring a little bit more perspective to it as we ask some questions. But Chuck and I, as what the folks say, you're taken back. Now, we did not say that we were caught off guard because we saw the way things were going from watching the media.
No.
That it was some what my boys say, some shiggity. It was some shiggity going on, right? We could tell that there's some things that was about to happen that just wasn't going to add up. And Huggy Lowdown said it's some shiggity out there in the atmosphere. What we're going to dive into this. I know everybody got some questions. Chuck, what were you thinking when you first heard the news?
So I'm hearing the news as I am in Clarksdale, Mississippi,
Uh huh.
uh, hearing a story of a now woman who was then a young girl whose mother was run out of Hollandale, Mississippi,
Uh huh.
at gunpoint,
Hmm.
with a cross being burned in her yard
Yeah.
for her having the audacity to attempt to integrate an all, you know air quotes, white school. So I get the notification on my watch, because I got my phone monitoring the live stream that we're producing as we're celebrating this woman who has taken the Aaron E. Henry Health Center
Mm.
from a two van operation to a 45, or I think it may have been 65 vehicle operation, where they can basically show up to where the people are and give the people what they need in terms of health services. And I look down and I see Kyle Rittenhouse, uh, not guilty on all counts. And immediately my mind goes to, everything that was gonna be in question is like, all right, this has to be all about self defense. Well, what does self defense look like for me if I'm in a situation and I have to protect myself? Will I be afforded these same type of privileges in the justice system if I go somewhere with my gun as a American, and I have my gun and somebody presents themselves to me as a threat? If I'm in Kyle Rittenhouse situation, will the justice system react, or will I have the type of outcome the same way that Kyle did in this particular situation? That's the question that ran through my mind. Then I had to tune back in to try to make sure I was, providing the type of service that
Mm-hmm.
that the type of program that I was at absolutely deserved. So that's my immediate question, and I'm still at that particular uh still at that question, sitting with the question, riding with the question, and I I don't know if I'm answering it for myself. I don't know if that would be the case, or I don't feel as if I will get that same type of outcome.
So for me, I know a lot of time we see things that happen in different areas, right? So you got one thing that happened in this state, this city, and I know that you have municipal law, like right there in the city government, different ordinances and county.
Right.
Then you have state law. Then you have, federal law. Certain things are just across the board.
Right.
What I couldn't understand is there was no question that the people were dead. There was no question
Yeah.
that he killed them, even if he had a
Mhm.
manslaughter charge or whatever the case may be. How you find how you found not guilty and acquitted of all charges when there was no question that you pulled the trigger and killed these folks? And I know of cases in other areas. That's why I want to centralize in on that particular area, because I know certain state laws with firearms are different. But you left your home state and traveled to another state and walked up and down the street and shot folks and then played the card, and they threw the gun charge out, right? So I don't know if I think it might have been a possession issue in that state, that you could be 16 and whatever and have be possession of a long gun. That's another thing I tell people they might not understand. There are different laws between when they say firearms, they're usually talking about pistols. Long guns has a whole different
Mhm.
classification, but you still what you did was kill somebody and maimed another person. Now, mind you, now
Mhm.
everybody and none of these folks black, but they were protesting about what happened to a black person. So, what do
Right.
racists hate more than black people?
The- what what's one of their terms? Sympathizers.
Oh, they got
Negro
ninja lovers. We could say everything else. We
Negro
could,
sympathizers.
you could say everything else, but that's what it is. So you killed these folks because of what they were sympathizing and what they were doing, and they had nothing. And you said you was, defending yourself. So, Seneca, can you help us with some of this? Because I know I was talking to another gentleman that's going to jump on about a paper I did a while back, but I keep talking about it. I did it because it fell on my heart because of the relevance of culture versus policy. Law, which is the policy, says one thing, which is supposed to be black and white. Then culture
Right.
says, "Oh no, that's not how we do it here." One of those type of things.
Yeah. Man, I'll be honest. When I heard the verdicts, unfortunately, I wasn't really surprised with
Yeah.
what happened. I wasn't surprised that he had been found not guilty. Honestly, I thought that there may have been a chance that he probably would have been found guilty of a lesser offense, say manslaughter or
Mhm.
something like that, because I believe from my recollection of events, I didn't follow this trial closely. I don't know if it was broadcast on TV, like on court TV or whatever, but I wasn't, following it day by day. But my recollection of events is that there was I think, during the protest when he started firing upon people, that there was a time where he was on the ground, I think, and some people may have been attacking him, and then those people ran away. And as he got up, he still fired some rounds, let off a few rounds at some people. So based on that, I thought that maybe the jury would have found him guilty of a lesser offense, say manslaughter or something like that. But unfortunately, he, obviously he beat all the charges. But I thought that, going back to your point about the long guns, I thought that when the judge dismissed that case, at first I was thinking, well, that's just crazy because clearly this guy was 17 and clearly he crossed state lines with a weapon. But as I read more into it, I think it may be a hunting law exception that allows youths to go hunting. And so it's kind of like what Mac was saying, that law probably applies more so to pistols or something like that, or handguns. But there is an exception to that law. And so the law says that if you are under the age of, I think it's 18 or 17, then you cannot possess a weapon. But there's an exception that says, except if it's a shotgun or a rifle that
Right.
is longer than 17 inches or something like that. And he had a long gun. His gun met the exception. So, and that's why the judge threw that out. But after I heard that, I thought, this kid may, he might beat it. But in addition to that, it was released that there were 11 white people on his jury and only one African American. And I know that stuff like this should not come down to race. We expect, white people as well as black people to do the right thing and follow the law. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, I don't know how these people ruled. I don't know how the jurors, all 12 of them were raised or what they believe in. But unfortunately, man, stuff like this, when I can't say every case like this, but a lot of times cases, it really does come down to race and jurisdiction. And in this case, there were 11 white jurors and one African American. I don't know if our people showed up. Like I say, we expect white people to do the right thing, and you're not out here trying to get a jury full of black people. But unfortunately, that's the case sometimes. But in this case, he had a favorable jury that just happened to rule in his favor. So
I heard something about that. Like they dismissed everybody. Like they're saying almost like he had a hand in. There's so many things you speculate. People post certain things, what they believe, what their opinion might be, but I was looking more at the facts that you see. Um, and one again, he left his home state with a long gun
yeah,
to enter a protest to be a counter protester.
right.
You killed two people, and after you killed two people, you still are not found guilty of anything. Now we just got we got an attorney on, and we do have a law enforcement officer that just popped on. We're gonna try to bring him in right quick.
And while
Like
you
you
do
got it.
that, Mac,
Yeah.
I'll just say that I think intent should matter. And it's kind of like you said, if you leave your home
Mm-hmm.
with a weapon
Mm-hmm.
going somewhere, I mean, that's a good indication of your intent. I mean, if you got to carry a gun to go somewhere, that's a good sign that you may not need to go to that place. But I don't know about Wisconsin, but I know in most places you're not. I don't think you can defend property with use of deadly force. So in this case, it's like you said, he left his home state with a weapon, going across state lines to defend someone else's property, and he brought along a semi-automatic or an automatic weapon. And so I think that's a pretty good indication of what possibly may have been his intent.
So we just joined by this brother has a lot of titles. We call him one Chloe, but he's trained officers. He's was a part of fight crime, investing kids. He does firearm training. He's a former chief, and so he's done multiple trainings and been around the country. And we definitely want to get his perspective because this is somebody on the ground like us. We
Hey,
just talked
Chuck.
about this stuff the other day. So Chloe,
What's up, Warren?
help us out. Help us out. We were just
Are
talking
we
about the
on
whole.
now? Or what are we about to do?
We own, brother. We own. We own. We wide open. We talking to you. We interviewing you. Chloe, can you hear me? We on Facebook and everything else.
What?
So, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Chloe?
Can you
Chloe,
hear
can
me,
you hear
Chuck?
me?
Okay.
No, he can't hear us.
Yeah. Warren, can you hear me?
I can hear you, and I can hear the other gentleman too.
Okay.
Oh,
All right. Well, look, we're live right now. Mac just did the intro for you, and we've got Seneca,
Okay.
who's a practicing attorney in the state of Mississippi,
Okay.
and yeah, we wanted to get your thoughts and immediate reaction on the Rittenhouse trial, and then my particular question. Well, I think I'm centering on like the type of defense that that
You breaking up
Rittenhouse
real
is.
bad on me. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I'm
Uh,
rolling. So I'm coming
is
through.
he
I'm
breaking up to
almost ahead.
anybody else or just me?
It's just you. It's just you, Chloe.
But yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. It's on you.
It's on you, Chloe. Go ahead.
I I couldn't hear anything you said. I got the first part about my reaction, but then the second part I didn't get anything about
So what
because
we were,
you started breaking up on me.
can you hear me now, Chloe? Chloe, can you hear me? Okay.
I'm just wondering, is it just me? Can anybody else hear me?
Yeah, we can hear
Can you
you,
hear
I
but
me,
hear you.
sir?
yeah,
Yeah.
we can
Okay,
hear
Chuck,
Can
you
you.
all,
just
can
went
you hear
out.
me, Juan?
I can hear you, but Chuck went out and then he started breaking up. So
Yeah, I think we can. Everybody can hear you. I don't think you can't hear Mac though.
no, I can't even see Mac.
Okay.
Okay. So Chloe, go ahead and somebody tell Chloe to go
But
ahead
we'll
and give
make it work. So
your
Chuck, you wanted me to
spiel.
respond to my first thought of when I heard he was guilty, and something else you said. Another question statement.
Yeah, your initial thoughts to the verdict. Let's start there.
Well, just from how the trial was going, I didn't think that they were going to convict. Um, I just didn't. I thought it was about a 70-30 chance. 30 meaning that there that's the conviction, and 70 no, they were not going to convict him. Obviously, the judge got a lot of attention that he should not have got because the judge, it seemed to be about the judge and the prosecutor at that point. So that was a huge no, regardless of what the prosecutor did. The judge made it about the prosecutor and the judge, which obviously has a huge monumental effect on um, how a jury looks at cases. And so, but that's a story for another day. But I think that had at least 50 to 60% of the verdict. I think that was um, the show that the judge put on with all the emotion and the anger towards the prosecutor. That was totally unwarranted.
So I kind of figured that it was going downhill.
And you had another question. I just couldn't hear you because you broke up on
I'm
me.
not sure. So my other question, with you having the law enforcement experience, and we
Mhm.
apologize for the technical difficulties that we're experiencing, but
That's
we
okay.
definitely want to have this conversation. The question that I had was about the prosecution's, no, well, no, not the prosecution, but the defense's position of self defense, and basically that's what they used to quote unquote prove Rittenhouse's innocence. Like how do you use the law of self defense and then the whole Second Amendment thing to prove a person not guilty for murder?
I think one of the things that played a big part was the fact that one of the individuals that was killed, I believe, had a handgun, and
Mm-hmm.
so they kept bringing that up about that gun and kept bringing it up about the gun.
Yeah.
Um, when guns are introduced in any situation, it's going to be bad. That's why I am not a huge gun right advocate uh, because of that. Because if you have a gun and I have a gun, we ain't fighting. Got it? I get the fact that it's your right to carry a gun and my right to carry a gun, but when you introduce two guns into a situation of heated physical altercation, eventually 9 times out of 10, a gun is going to be displayed, and then it's going to cause the other person, to display a gun. So that's my biggest issue. I think that going forward, nobody should be able to carry a gun in certain zones protest zones. I don't care if you're protesting, you should not be. And I can list the reasons why. It's not because I'm trying to keep you from carrying a gun, but certain cities should be able to enact certain violations for a period of time, right? For this period of time, you are not allowed to come here for a protest because of these particular reasons why. And hey, this is great. This is great case law and a great case to use for this particular ordinance violation. Now, when you leave the particular zone that you're in, protest zone or whatever you want to call it, hey, grab your gun. Johnny, grab your gun. So we're going to learn from this. I think we should not. This should not go on. This should not go just go to where we just let it go and don't don't learn anything from it. Um, Unfortunately, two people lost their life. Another person was injured. But I do think this. I think the mother should receive uh, some type of punishment or some type of charge, serious felony charge for uh, transporting her son to that location, who at the time was 17, if I'm not mistaken. Am I correct?
Yeah.
That's
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the part. That's the other part we're missing. That's the part we're missing.
That's the
A
first
huge
thing.
part. That is huge. Because
That's
Chuck,
the
as you know as well as I do, we could talk about adolescent brain development,
yeah.
Yeah.
and unfortunately for us, he's an adolescent. He's adolescent, and his brain is still not developed. At 18, you can say he fake cried. You can say he cried on purpose. I mean, I don't know. I just know his brain ain't developed. I mean, that's common sense. So, but um, that's the story for another
So like what Warren just said about from a social
day.
service, social service side, I've known mothers situation or cases with
Anything else?
mothers. Claude, you
yeah,
can't hear me? I don't think
yeah.
you
He can't hear you at all, Matt.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so Chloe, Mac is talking now. I'm gonna remove you and then put you back in, and hopefully that might correct the
Okay.
situation. So just hang tight. We
Okay.
gonna get Mac
I
and his
will.
response, and then get Seneca in too.
Okay.
So for me, the biggest thing was we've heard of cases where mothers have had to leave their children at home alone to go to work, and DHS comes and take the children for neglect. Right? We've seen situations where a parent do the smallest thing and they get in trouble with the law for abuse and neglect. There was never, not at any given time, were there any conversation about charging her for taking your child along with you, because you had your firearm too, to go to this protest, to counter protest. They never talked about it. They never even once brought it up about charging her with anything about child abuse, neglect, anything like that. And I know for a fact, when you talk about crossing state lines, that's one thing that's going to be universal, is what you consider to be abuse, neglect, and you taking your
I
underage
don't know if
child.
he removed me or not. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can
Matt,
still
yeah,
hear
I
you.
can hear you. I think Matt
Yeah,
can hear
Yeah.
you, but
I
I
didn't get
still can't
removed
hear
yet.
Matt.
yeah. So so that situation, um, it just like show you the difference in how they look at law. Again, culture versus policy. We can say it's whitewashed or whatever the case may be, but if this was a sister in the same position, would they have done the same thing, or would they threw the book at her? They arrested, in a different state. They arrested a young lady who was homeless, who used an address so her children go to school.
Mm-hmm.
We just had another at the same time while we had this case going on. We had folks that were flooding the timeline to keep a young man from being executed in a different state when they didn't have enough evidence to really have him in prison like he is. But in exchange for his life, he can never apply for parole. He can never do anything. You could just keep him in prison for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
But here's someone who intentionally went somewhere with a firearm and shot 3 people, and you don't even get a manslaughter charge,
Yeah.
and the mother don't get charged at all. And
Yeah.
so, that's a whole lot of red flags. Whole lot. It's a whole lot of red flags. And so
Yeah.
basically what they're telling you is you can do this stuff and nothing is going to happen to you.
Yeah, I think uh, going back to what Juan said earlier, just real quick, I did see a clip where there was a guy on the stand and he admitted to raising a weapon toward Rittenhouse or something like that. And I thought that was huge as well. That was another thing that made me think that he was probably gonna be acquitted, because that was information that I had never heard before, and I'm not sure if the jury had heard before. But I think that once that information came out, I think there was a big reaction in the courtroom. It's kind of like what Juan says. Once you start introducing weapons and guns and all of this stuff, it could
Yeah.
possibly change the jury's entire perspective on the events and everything that happened. But going back to the mother, at this time there may not be any law. I'm not sure if there's a law in Wisconsin by which she could be charged technically, since he was allowed to carry that weapon. I don't know of any law that prevents a minor from attending a protest. And I guess since he was acquitted by the jury, there's no law that he broke. However, I do think that there should be some law, and there may be one on the books in Wisconsin, regarding parents who introduce their children into hostile situations, such as she did. And I think one of the biggest things that I've taken away from this is, if you look at this case and you look at the current case that's going on with Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia, and then just going back to several others, there seems to be an increase. Just from what I've seen, maybe it's always been this way, and maybe it hasn't been, but I've noticed an increase in vigilantism, or like vigilante justice, particularly against African Americans. And there are certain laws on the books that allows, like in this situation, that allowed the young man to go across state lines with a weapon to attend a protest, which is crazy. Like as Juan was saying earlier, that you would allow someone into a hostile environment and say it's okay to also bring in weapons into this environment, just kind of making matters worse. But there are also, in the Aubrey case, those guys are claiming that they were making a citizen's arrest. These are citizens with no police training whatsoever, and they're using these laws, I guess, in their defense, to say that they have a right to profile certain people. When they have no training to do so, or even make an arrest, to stop and accost people and question them about their whereabouts or where they're going. I just think that's crazy. And that's one of the things that I'm worried about when I see this in other cases that are taking place across our country.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to get a shirt that says, "Can you hear me?" But I think if we started, rather than having all these great conversations that we're about to have over the next month on TV and radio, I think we actually go and start trying to push some legislation for things of that nature. You call it what you want, but if you're going to a protest, there should be no need for a gun. Okay, you should not bring a gun, and it should make it a federal offense, because you're protesting. Should be a peaceful protest. And guns don't mean peace. Any way you look at it. Even the sound of a gun is not peaceful when it goes off. So something needs to come of this, rather than two people losing their life. That is, and I just thought about it just now, that I've written 5 policies for law enforcement, and 2 are supposed to get introduced this year, because they got pushed back last year. And so one was for hiring and training practices, and the other was for retention practices. And so I might even draft some policy legislation for things of this nature. But this is how things get started for policies and laws and whatnot. So
Yeah.
Conversation.
Yeah.
So Chuck, what about you? What's your thoughts? I mean, from your time with fight crime, investing kids, working with
Chuck, are you still there?
working with stuff.
Yeah.
For some
I'm
reason,
here.
he
Okay.
cannot hear me.
Is Mac at home, or is he trying to get on at home?
Mac is on now. I don't know why you can't see or
Yeah,
hear him.
I just have a scroll. He's just scrolling. Yeah,
Oh,
but it's
okay.
fine. I don't need to see him.
Mac was just asking me about, from some of the experiences that I gained through my time with fight crime investing kids
Yeah,
and
yeah.
police training institute. My thoughts on um one what you proposed are some of the work that you have been doing and continue to do. Um, I guess my response to it is um, part of the problem is what one kind of alluded to is like you, all right, police officers, and I'm making a generalization, but most police officers see themselves as police officers first, and are definitely first, and then their race comes into it. I think uh, white people tend to have this thing where their whiteness or their reality of being white doesn't necessarily weigh or give them anything that they have to hold up for. Meaning that I'm black, I know that I still got to go and hang with the family, and because I'm quote unquote black, and we had to like redefine what black is, or what African American is, or what Negro is, because being black in America is not the same as being quote unquote white in America and Irish. Like your Irish culture denotes that you will do certain things a certain way. White just says that you have certain privileges in this particular country. For us, like blackness in this country goes along with culture. It defines how you move in a certain way. It defines how people look at you, how you look at other people. There's a lot that goes along with being black in America. So my it runs uh, proposal of legislation and writing these policies in my time at Fight Crime, it it leads me to thoughts that say we got to continue to try to change culture in policing, because it starts in the academy where you start to believe that you're a policeman first. It's reinforced at the field training officer level where certain behaviors are adopted or ushered into a person's day-to-day operations. And I've heard Juan tell stories, and other police officers for that matter, where the only people that they hang out with is other police officers, and then you get this type of insulated and horse blinder, one-sided type of view, and you don't know how to look at the world any other way except for the or through the lens of a police officer. And when you get to that point, it's like you you have no other culture other than the culture of policing, and we're not talking about
Right.
community policing in terms of a term or an act or a way of operating. We just talking about like we the police, we beat people up, we shoot people, can't nobody do nothing to us. And then you take it a step further because I'm white and I like the police and I support the police, and I know that these laws are designed a certain way to protect the police. I'm gonna move in that particular way, and then when I move in that particular way, politically, I'm going to put policies in place that if I do something with a long rifle, then me and my hunting offspring will be protected. So I'm just looking at it from a holistic standpoint,
Hmm.
whereas we have to move a certain way. We're gonna have to push things in a certain manner. We're gonna have to operate covertly. Uh, we're gonna have to spend more time like you said, offline doing the organizing work. And I mean, I'm preaching to the choir in a sense, in the four people that are gathered here. But like, man, look, we gotta get our kids more engaged uh on policy and make that sexy and make that cool and really pull back the veil, because right now, it's TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and the most of the people that tune into Nightcap Knowledge, Black with No Chaser, are people that care about community and they're raising their kids a certain way. But
Mm-hmm.
it's a whole I don't know if it's a generation or if it's a couple generations that still have not had the veil lifted, that are looking through this lens, or their eyes are behind this veil and they can't see how things are being chess piece into place, and they don't know how to operate, and they're operating in the manner that those who love police, and those who are the police, and those who love the justice system, uh, because it's doing what it was designed to do, because they know the way that it operates,
It it
and we don't necessarily know the way that it operates.
it was
I,
designed
I
like
I I have 3 points, well 2.5 points, but I started getting, so I had no sleep. So just help me remember 1%. So if I say what's the other one, just say 1%.
Okay.
So when you mentioned, Chuck, you mentioned that, I mentioned and other officers mentioned that we we hang around other cops, we we eat sleep cop. I know some cops that have been on 10 years and they still listen to the radio all day when they're off. And I think that is the most ridiculous thing on the planet. And so I'm saying that to say this. When I was in the FBI undercover program, they had once you got done with an assignment, you had a debriefing period. You had to see a psychiatrist. You had to take a battery of psychological exams every single time to make sure that you were all right. And then they wouldn't put you back in anything, especially if it was a deep cover. I don't know if you all remember the movie with LL Cool J and Omar Epps called In Too Deep. You
hmm
Mm-hmm.
remember that movie when LL was God? That
Yeah.
is literally how that goes. And that was DEA. And so even they realized, my handler at the time, one of my counselors was a white guy. He had gotten involved in he took down a huge motorcycle gang. Uh, uh, they call them OMGs, Outlaw Motorcycle Gang. And he was this big old guy, but he had gotten so deep that he started loving these guys, right? And then came the day to take him down. He was crying and everything because he was in too deep. And so I
Mm-hmm.
say that to say that even as officers, on a yearly, weekly, monthly basis, we need to be debriefed and take it brought back to reality. The question is, you're not going to get the chief to do it, or the sheriff to do it, or the one of the top administrators to do it. And I keep going back to, and we keep, and I'm not fussing, but I am fussing. Y'all asses
Mm-hmm.
ain't listening to me. Y'all not listening to me. The police work for you all. The police work for you all. The chief work when the chief tells you he don't want to talk to you, I be damned. Okay, you won't get it. If I tell you what, you don't want to talk to me, you won't have a check. Because if you go to any one of your bosses, those of us who work for somebody, and your boss calls you in the office and you say, "Hey, dog, I don't want to talk to you right now." You think you're gonna be getting a check that next week?
Hell
It ain't
no.
happening. It ain't happening. So we have got to get, and I'm not trying to push the people versus the police. What I'm trying to get people to see is the police are always going to do what they do, because like Chuck said, it was designed to do a certain thing. It is a machine. It is the matrix, and the matrix did not want to be disrupted. So it does what it does, and it doesn't know how to do anything else. That doesn't make it wrong, because guess what? It doesn't know right from wrong. It just is. It just is. We know right from wrong, but we allow things to happen, and we allow people to say things to us. We allow people to do things. And so what I'm saying is that policies are good, laws are great, even better. But until you get the people to literally start doing what you demand and command that they do, it's going to always be an issue. Judges ask for your vote all the time. And then once you vote for them, most of them turn their nose up at you, right? And the judge is an elected official most of the positions. Now, really quickly, the next point I had was when we talk about policy, the 1% sales tax for the city of Jackson. There was no, I didn't think we were going to get that passed. We came up with the policy, and that policy was strictly to support police and fire. We came up with it. We tried to push two other policies, taxes, $4.25 hotel motel tax, and then a rental car tax. But both of those failed. I'm saying this to say, I'm saying that to say this. I'm just a regular guy that happens to be a cop. On the scale of being the smartest guy, I think I'm 1 out of 10. I think I'm a solid 5 or 6. I might be one of the fastest guys, but I showed them so I know I ain't the smartest guy, and I am not the most patient guy. But I'm an optimist. I'm always optimistic. I have this saying, ever the optimist. I'm always optimistic. And so that being said, if we just go push something and do something, we can at least see what happens out of it. But we won't see what happens out of anything if we don't do anything. If we
Yeah.
don't do anything. So,
Yeah.
and the kids see that too. The kids see that. They see that, we're not doing anything. So that's why they go do what they do.
Chuck, you got to introduce the next guest. Let one know.
Yeah, most definitely. So at this time, ladies and gentlemen, you tuning in to Nightcap Knowledge Show live on Black and No Chaser. We've got CJ Lawrence, CEO of Black and No Chaser, that has just joined. Also, a practicing attorney in the state of Mississippi. So we've got CJ, Juan, Mac, Seneca, and myself here giving our responses and thoughts to the Rittenhouse verdict, but even more so focusing on, all right, what's next, and how do we, you know, move in the room that we're in right now. So, CJ, if you want to jump in and give your thoughts on and your response to the Rittenhouse verdict.
Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening to the audience. Really glad to be here tonight. Uh, Glad to be joining you fellas this evening. Uh, I hate the circumstances under which we are having this conversation, but uh, what I'll say about uh, the Rittenhouse verdict is this: what it has done, essentially, in many ways, is emboldened to a great extent those with similar mindsets as it relates to perhaps those who may align their ideology with white supremacist mindsets or uh, perspectives, things of that nature, to the extent that they'll feel emboldened to go to protests with weapons. They already were going to protests with weapons, but they'll feel even more so emboldened to attend protests, to antagonize the protesters, to engage protesters, and to ultimately uh, make the argument that that they acted in a manner as Rittenhouse did in fear for their lives. A precedent has been established, and that's what occurs when when a verdict is rendered and case law is created. I think that's something that so in Wisconsin, what the state of Wisconsin said today essentially is that protesters, when engaged in protest, when encountered by uh, someone like Kyle Rittenhouse, uh, if they were to uh, place that armed person in fear, um, that there would be no recourse for them should that fear manifest itself in a manner that allows him to uh, quote unquote defend himself uh, in the form of firing a weapon and killing two people and maiming another. The issue that truly we see with the Rittenhouse verdict is not so much that it is something that is shocking. I mean, it is mind blowing, probably to all five of us sitting up here as black men, from the standpoint that we understand that under the same circumstances, it would be highly unlikely that any of us would have
Mm-hmm.
6 charges originally, 6 felony charges, one dismissed, and the other 5 be acquitted on when facing and having 2 bodies on your hands and another person who you shot basically blew their arm off. Uh, and you traveled to the danger, to what you uh,
Yeah.
qualified as danger. You traveled to that danger. You stayed in that danger. You traveled there armed. We've seen 12-year-old boys like Tamir Rice with toy weapons or toy guns. Let me not even call it a weapon, but a toy. Be shot in less than 2 seconds and have it justified in less than 2 days. Uh, we uh, we witnessed Trayvon Martin's death justified because a strange white man with a gun followed him at night in the rain and took his life. He was unarmed. Nobody at any point uh, on that jury at that time wondered about what his fears might be, even though testimony came out during the trial that Trayvon found the man who was following him creepy. He called him creepy. His witness said that he felt he was creepy, and so he had a right to fear for his life. But nobody ever raised that in the George Zimmerman trial. And so what we're seeing here, y'all, is that America is American once again. I mean, this is not surprising in the sense that historically, whether it be black people speaking up for black people or white people speaking up for black people, America has historically both taken the lives of those people and justified the taking of their life. So if we take a step back and understand that these 3 white men who were at this rally, at this protest, were speaking up for Jacob Blake's being shot multiple times by the police in Wisconsin earlier that day, then we understand that that's not very much different from a Goodman, Cheney, and Schwerner being killed in Philadelphia, Mississippi in 1965, and having that uh, uh, justified at that time. Historically, America is doing what it has always done, and the anomaly has not been for us to witness justice either in the form of people being convicted for taking our lives or things that's literally what the anomaly is at this point. That's usually the hiccup in the way that the system functions. And my concern is for the families of the men who died. But in addition to that, my concern is to the fact that what white people are being told is they are empowered and emboldened to perceive themselves as law and order, and to be the determinant and dictator as it relates to us. These are regular citizens that committed these acts, and you have to understand that this Kyle Rittenhouse case is running simultaneously with the McMichael case that's taking place right now in Georgia. And it's another instance of white men deciding that they were the authority over a black life in this instance. Rittenhouse, 17 years old, decided that he was going to drive from wherever he was and be an authority figure over people he didn't know in a place he wasn't familiar with for a reason he didn't even understand, yet he was scared and armed. He purports to say. Again, you have a white man in the McMichael trial saying, "I was scared when I chased down Ahmaud Arbery in a vehicle, ran him. Basically, we followed him in vehicles until he couldn't run no more. Literally, his body had stopped being able to keep going forward. If Ahmaud Arbery could still be alive today, he'd still be running today. If it meant that he didn't have to encounter those men in that manner in an ultimate face-off where he was facing uh, three men and a shotgun. And yet we sit, these men have sat on a stand for the last 2-3 days talking about their knowledge to try to make themselves seem like expert in law enforcement, one, to make them seem like they are a part of law enforcement, and uh, and to justify taking the life of a man who done absolutely nothing and who you admittedly state had not threatened you, had not even said a mumbling word to you, didn't even curse you before you took his life.
Yeah.
And so
Yep.
I hope that I'm not rambling and saying that for me the Rittenhouse verdict was frustrating to see the verdict, but not unexpected. But it's about the larger implications of what it could potentially mean in
Yeah.
Mississippi where we are, or
Yeah.
some of these other places with some of these other folks. And I think they may be opening us really big Pandora's box, particularly with this case.
It does. That was the
Yeah.
point that I made in terms of you're having people who are police, and then people who identify as supporters of the police,
Mm-hmm.
and the type of concessions that are made to people that are the police and identify as the police. So if I do this, and if I say this, then in the event that I have to go and be represented by legal counsel in a trial where I shot somebody because I was, attempting to enforce the law, or attempting to create order, then I'm gonna be okay, and I'm probably gonna, become a celebrity for people that are the police and people that like the police, because essentially that's what has happened with Rittenhouse. Like, I took a chance to listen to various podcasts, and uh, some of the, and I'm saying various, but I mean particularly podcasts that are pro Second Amendment, pro
Mm-hmm.
police, super conservative or neo conservative, and a lot of them, they said that at the very least Kyle and his mama made a bad decision to go to the protest, because they said that their kids who may have been 17 years old and wanted to go to the protest, they was like, not with a gun, they would have told them no. So at that point, they draw the line, and their uh, point of entry in terms of what should be scrutinized is Kyle had the right to walk down the street with a gun, and because these folks were out there, quote unquote, rioting, uh, because he was attempting to create order, or because he had the right to walk down the street with a gun, then Kyle didn't do anything wrong.
Chuck, we were talking about a lot of different things to look at, um, but one factor is we named several cases, and what happened? What did the people do when they didn't get the answer they wanted? You know, it's a lot of time we talk about, yeah, with the law, but the law was not designed for us. We were not recognized as people. We still not recognized as human, and it was designed for the folks that it benefit. But the question always goes back to, what do we do, or what has happened? What are the consequences? What we're going to do? We're going to get mad and we're going to protest again, or we're going to hold a prayer vigil to Black Jesus to come down and fix it for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm asking those questions because it keeps happening. We talk about the definition of insanity, but
Yeah.
what are we doing? It goes back to what capacity do we have. So we talk
Right.
about financial capacity. What do we have? What do we own?
I,
You know,
I,
we talk about legal. We talk about a lot of different things. So you don't have anything to say. Hey. I know you might not like them darkies over there, but they paid such and such, and I ain't gonna mess with them because that's gonna hurt my bottom line and hurt my paycheck. And
Yeah.
because for the whole situation why they were protesting in the first place, it gives you the kind of the environment in which you were walking into, and who that it favored for the whole purpose of having the protest in the first place and why you were protesting. Seneca, you about to jump in?
yeah, I was gonna say, just going back to what CJ was saying. I think that you asked what can we do, and Juan kind of hinted on this earlier, and it starts with what I guess one way of dealing with it is changing the laws. And so if you look at Trayvon Martin's case, where
I'm
this
gonna be
guy was
devil's
on the
advocate with this
phone, he
too.
actually he actually
Yeah.
he called the police, and the police his directions were stop following this person, stop
Yep.
following this kid. Those were his
Correct.
explicit directions. He
Correct.
disobeyed those
Yep.
commands and wound up killing this kid. And in the Rittenhouse case, there were police officers on the scene who were not intervening. And in the Ahmaud Arbery case, I don't think those guys even attempted to call the police. And yet, but yeah, I think a part of their defense is, well, they were attempting to make a citizen's arrest. And so I think that in those cases where people either disobey police officers or disobey an officer's command and they end up killing someone, or in the Ahmaud Arbery case where they just didn't even bother to call the police officers. We need to get rid of this idea that citizens can make an arrest where they're not trained officers. They have absolutely no training. They have no authority to stop anyone and question them and accost them and ask them about their whereabouts, search them, or anything like that. I think there should be harsher penalties for those people, or just to completely do away with that law
Well,
forever.
Seneca, I don't think it's an issue about legislation and policy and law. That's not the issue. The issue goes back to how it is administered and who it benefits. Yeah, they can do that. I saw where I forgot what city it was, where the brother was doing a delivery. He in a delivery truck in the neighborhood, and somebody in this little ass SUV sitting in the entranceway and asked him what he was doing. He like, I'm working. Well, prove it to me. You have a certain
Yeah,
entitlement because once you pick up the phone, who gonna support you? You know what I'm saying? So it's not, we have policies and laws on the books, and then they are still bent to fit what people want to fit when they want it to. And that's why I talk about culture versus policy. The policy says black and white. This is what you should do, and this is what you shouldn't do. How it's administered and enforced
yeah,
is totally two different things. Again, that never came up in the case with Trayvon Martin and stuck to it. He never served any with George Zimmerman, never served any time for disobeying a directive of a law enforcement officer or from dispatch. You and I couldn't do that, even in a real emergency situation,
yeah,
right? So again, we go back to our profession, right? Social service. How a mother takes their child to a protest with loaded firearm with the whole purpose of protesting against the protesters, and he believes it because he grew up in it. He was led to believe that he's entitled to do this. And then you went and hung out and celebrated and drank beer at 17. But you use a lot of stuff as admissible evidence because you were painting a picture of what type of person this is. Now, again, you dug in, we flip into Trayvon Martin again, you found the worst picture you could find on social media. You didn't show him in a NASA jumpsuit.
yeah,
It goes back again to control the narrative. Prime
Yeah.
example, locally here, I tell everybody how when somebody that's they trying to cover up with the media, when somebody's involved in whatever the case may be, it takes too long for the story to come out. They control the narrative, they clean it up. So our
Mac,
issue,
oh my
yeah.
bad. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So so
You hitting on something there.
so
Yeah.
the issue is not the laws and policies and stuff on the book. It is how they are enforced, and when they are enforced, who is it benefiting? Because you're gonna say he has a future. at 17 after you done shot 3 people. But we throw away little black children for smaller issues than that, like they don't have a future. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I'm like, we can't get around it. It comes back to the same thing of who is designed to benefit. We had it, and we had that same issue right here in the city of Jackson. They had a protest with guns in the middle of a shelter in place order by the governor. Go ahead, CJ.
Matt, can you imagine? Can you imagine if there were, let's just say, armed black folks? Can you imagine if armed black folks were at the Capitol on January 6th?
Mm-hmm.
A 17-year-old armed black boy with an AR-15 on January 6th. And he saw these folks jumping on these police officers.
And defended them.
And decided, I'm going to shoot these people because I fear for the lives of this officer. Like that, people actually died. On January 6th, they actually did kill people. So it would have been reasonable for somebody acting in the interest of protecting someone to defend the lives of the people that they saw in danger at that moment. But let's just say this 17-year-old kid from DC decided to go to the Capitol that day. Black from Southeast DC decided to go to the Capitol that day, and with his gun, with his illegal gun. And when he saw officers being attacked, he decided, I'm going to shoot these people, or I feel threatened. I'm going to shoot 2 people, 2 other January 6th insurrectionists, and I'm going to maim another one. While this is a hypothetical, I think we can all comfortably say we know what the outcome of that situation would be. Well, at least I feel I know what the outcome would be. Even with him saying he was defending the lives of those officers on that day. Now, one officer did shoot one woman. I believe Ashley Babbitt was shot.
Yeah.
But that was a Secret Service. Was it a Secret Service agent that shot her, or either a Capitol Police officer or a Secret Service agent shot her
Capitol Police
as they were preparing to literally breach the door to I believe like the Congressional Hall or something like that. Like literally they were about to be inside, and that was the deterrent to get them out of there. Ultimately, what I'm saying is under these same circumstances, you take the same situation and make him a black boy from DC at January 6th or at Charlottesville. And you ask yourself, if when this man was driving through a crowd of people and like literally running over people in Charlottesville and taking the lives of individuals in Charlottesville, if a black boy with a gun had decided to fire that gun off at those who were of the same ideology as the man driving that car through those people at that time, would it have been justified? Would it have been deemed reasonable? Would his fears have been deemed reasonable, even though they are actually killing and injuring people? Because there's no other instances, as far as I know of death or injury that occurred in Wisconsin on that night, outside of the killings that Kyle Rittenhouse did. Literally, he's the only one who took lives or shed blood. I mean, caused bloodshed. And so, I asked that question just to ask that as far as policy
and that's what I want. I want us to pick back up on this another day, but I want to ask you and Seneca CJ to legally. And I was talking to one before. I like the comparison of the same. I was talking about mixing apples and oranges. In Ferguson case, when the AD refused to prosecute or indict the officer, it was a difference because it was a situation that happened with a black officer, and he indicted the black officer for a lesser situation, and actually put him in jail and suspended him without pay. So when you go, let's go to back to Wisconsin again and say, what have similar situations like this where the person was black or another person of color? What was the ruling? And look at it. And that's why I say you compare apples and oranges. You take this child, and I'm saying child, who was not from this state. What did you do with the young black males or Hispanic males that's in this state when they have lesser offenses? What was the verdict on them? Or you could look at that same judge and see what the ruling, because he played a major part when you didn't allow them to call the people that were shot and killed victims.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that. Even when you say the quote unquote street gang, street, black on black crime, which is nothing that exists, you still say the shooting victim was. The shooting victim was. But you wouldn't even allow them to call these people victims because of your personal ideology and personal biasness, and you intervene in that. And that's why that they left so many legal loopholes where they show personal biasness, and that you already had your mind made up in this case that it has to go to a higher court. It's something, this cannot be the end for this, because you clearly showed it. You clearly showed it.
So, let me ask this question, CJ and Seneca, and then go ahead and ask Mac. Answer Mac's question. But is this truly the end of this?
Pass to you first, Seneca.
One of y'all little friends done jumped in here. Somebody good looking, honky or something. I don't know. Somebody must follow y'all on Blackwood.
Who
Blackwood
is
no
it?
Chase. I don't know. One of these folks that's trying to be
Nah,
nice.
man. I think these are trolls. And for the record,
Hmm.
whomever you are, man, look, whatever.
What did they say? I guess I missed it. I didn't
Oh,
see
you
it.
well?
It's in the comments.
Well, my bad.
Uh,
My bad. I don't even give them attention. Let's keep back to talking what
yeah.
we were talking about, because
Oh shit!
that's the whole purpose of what they're
I'm
doing.
perfectly okay with y'all letting them rip.
No, I ain't got no energy for them. I'm energy trying to take care of our folks, because that's what they're gonna do. They're gonna sit back and just let their fingers move. It's about all they're good for. Um,
Right.
yeah, yeah, that's what they do. So anyway,
S-
so
uh,
the whole thing about it is, again, like I said, what you gonna do, and what's gonna happen, because you when you're making progress when you start to get under folks' skin, right? When
you
you
know
make a
what
difference.
though?
Yeah.
That's the interesting thing, man.
Uh,
Matt, is there's no winning for them. Even when what they get, which they believe or perceive as justice,
yeah.
it never really was about justice for them. It's more so about ensuring that they continue to inflict pain upon us, or
Right.
the desire that we be in pain. And the reality is that I don't think I, I think this particular case, the Rittenhouse case, didn't disappoint me because it would mean that I would have an expectation of America that I don't have.
Right.
Uh, and so, in that regard, this is not upsetting. Uh, it's it's uh, it's just a confirmation of what
Yeah.
we already knew.
I
And
already knew.
so, when you have a person that's a troll who literally is
Mhm.
gloating over the idea that three people uh, lives have forever been changed, their families' lives have forever been changed, and they're happy about it. In addition to them being happy about Kyle Rittenhouse being found not guilty of multiple charges of homicide,
Mhm.
the reality is that for those particular people, um, this is far more about the notion of winning and what winning looks like to them. Because reality is, in their minds, we are at war. Whether we call it that, or frame it that way or not, that's what a lot of them perceive this to be. And they've been at it with us for far longer than many of us may care to acknowledge or realize. So when you ask the question uh, about, you know, what does this, what does it mean? I think that was what Chuck was getting to. Like, what does this mean? I think what it means is that, as I was saying earlier, man, there are a lot of people that are going to feel empowered in some way by something like this. Unfortunately, George Zimmerman felt empowered after he was found not guilty of killing Trayvon Martin, to the extent that he would show up at gun shows, and he even sold the gun like for thousands of dollars. Like, somebody bought that. Uh, but you know, I what I'll say is that the best thing that we can continue to do is be proactive about how we build whatever it is we're building, uh, and purposeful in focusing on our communities and making sure that we are empower our communities in every way that we can, uh, because um, ultimately, whatever it is that we're going to seek from the system that currently exists, um, it's going to be very difficult to get, because there are going to continue to be judges like the judge that was referring to Rittenhouse's son. That I I I think that when I saw him thank the jury today, it felt like he was relieved for Rittenhouse. Um, when you are existing in a system like that, I think our number one focus has to be ourselves,
Right.
and ensuring that we are empowered, prepared, and and ready proactively to advance whatever we need to advance for ourselves.
And I think one of the things that comparison there were like three situations going on at the same time, same justice system, um, and this verdict. Is like, again, the law is supposed to be black and white, across the board. So while you have someone spinning the narrative about vigilante justice in one area, then you got this person doing the same thing. Then you got another person that's on death row, where there's not enough evidence, when even enough evidence for them to be on death row. But the system, same system, but you keep giving different outcomes. You're supposed to look at the information. You say, well, I can't remember the gentleman's name. He was executed several years back. You have to have all evidence without a shadow of a doubt that this person is guilty in order for this person to be executed. And even when you have, oh, well, not really enough evidence, oh, it's close enough, right? Even right here in Mississippi, even with the Scott sisters, and even with what they had to agree with just to get out and rest in peace, because we just lost one of them, right, for COVID complications. Um, it just lets you know the same system, but how it's carried out. And again, this is nightcap knowledge. So we say what we want to say. I don't understand why Zimmerman still draw breath out of all the shit he done and all the people he done it to. The thing is, I asked that question because things keep happening to people, period, that don't bother nobody. That's not in the wrong. It's not the self-defense. And then the people that are trying to protect themselves, the system end up taking them through the ringer because they don't have as much connection. But this person didn't have. It was not a fluent person. This was just somebody who was a gun fanatic with his mama. Him and his mammy went to a whole nother state, and they picked a fight with somebody. And you know what I'm saying? That they felt that you felt empowered because you felt that the local administration and law enforcement were going to support the ideology, and you knew you felt safe. You know, um, and you know you could get away with it or had a good chance of getting away with it. So
It's
we got to do a lot more, proactively and in response to situation besides getting upset and marching. And I'm just gonna say it. I'm like, what's the game plan? What are we gonna do? How are we gonna handle it? Um, those type things like that. And just call a spade a spade. If this person does wrong, no matter what color they are, how much money they got, they wrong. If this person does wrong, that's what the system. That's why I said justice is blind, but it has never been blind. It's always been peeking his ass from under that damn little scarf on your face, because you see things totally different, depending on who's the person that's in question. I just wanted to dive into this. I think this is something good to kind of bring folks together to have these conversations, because what happens in one area, it does transform and end up having similar situation in your area. If it hadn't happened here, we've had a lot of questionable things that happened here in Mississippi. We had enough things here that happened in the last 2 years that we can take up a whole week of nightcap knowledges. The
yeah.
question started is, how did this conversation starts to look at what legislation and policies and laws are on the books, how they're being enforced, and if not, what do we need to do to make sure it's done? But also from the community standpoint, what are we doing? You know, what are we doing to make sure that we are holding everybody accountable? And especially, I'm gonna say it, don't nobody else say this shit. For us, starting with our ass, because a house divided cannot stand. So if we are fighting among each other, and we talking about a greater enemy, then you are not gonna be ready for the war if you keep fighting your brother in the battle. So we got to do some different shit, right? Um, and when you upset people when they follow you, that means you're doing something right. Uh, Chuck, if we are at a minute, we are at an hour 20.
Yeah,
You want to do a round because Chloe can't hear me, so you want to bring Chloe and do a round with Chloe and Seneca.
yeah. Chloe is still here. Seneca, if you want to jump in here now and kind of give us some of your closing thoughts, and then we can get Juan in. And I'll say, thank you for everybody that left a comment. Whether you agree with our viewpoint or not, at the end of the day, I mean, wrong is wrong and right is right. So, but I guess it's all subjective. So Seneca, jump in.
Yeah, I'll just say, man, in closing, I thought that, again, going back to the verdict, it was very unfortunate. I was expecting him to at least be found guilty of at least one of those charges, but I'll be honest, I wasn't particularly shocked just based on some of the things that I heard, um, throughout the trial, little bits and pieces that came out. I'll say it again. One of my biggest fears here is one of the things that I'm noticing, and one of the things that I think we need to attack is just this idea that certain people have a right to operate as vigilantes and place themselves in the place of the police officers, whether the police officers are there or and available, or whether they have the opportunity to call the police and just don't. And I think that going back to what Mac and what everybody else has said, those people are obviously treated differently by the law. But just piggybacking lastly on what Max said, man, I think it starts with us just putting forth a united front to come together and just continuing to fight these types of things, and just continuing to get out to the polls and vote, and just keep changing the laws in our favor.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Seneca. I think that it's going to require us to be proactive, man, rather than reactive. A lot of the instances that we're seeing of the rallies and things like that are after the deaths occur. But I know that there are people that are doing the work right now, uh, and they do it daily, yourselves included. I think that us aligning with brothers and sisters who are from perhaps other backgrounds or work in other capacities. We have to come together as community and really think about how we elevate the collective and take care of ourselves, because it becomes clearer and clearer. Um, Having worked in this justice system for the last since 2007, I had to do my calculation real quick. That um, our faith can't be in the system that was created without us in mind. It has to be in each other, having the ability to disrupt that system and create new ones. Uh, it's and you know that might sound idealistic, but it's the it's the truth. We have to uh, have a united front, united mindset, and we have to begin to create our own systems. That's the intention behind Black with No Chase for real. And as the months, really within the next few months, we're really gonna roll out uh, some of the things that we're looking at to try to address exactly what you're talking about in a proactive way, um, on platforms of our own, with tools and resources of our own that allow us to um, really build the bridges that are necessary for the future. Because I think I it's so many things that happened this week, Mac,
Mm-hmm.
that impacted me in ways that I didn't even realize they was impacting me until I really just stopped working for a second and thought about it, and then it hit me like, man, a rapper whose music I never had it really listened to, but when I started seeing pictures of him and his family, him and his little girls and his wife, or his like him taking him losing his life, it impacted me, Young Dolph. It impacted me in ways that I didn't even realize, because I'm looking at the effect that it has on his family and those that were dependent upon him, and what that means for his life, and what that means for whoever decided to take his life, and why ever they decided to do it, and uh, how we as a community can figure out how to
That
uh, plant the proper seeds to ensure that these things don't happen in the future.
that's another conversation, and I don't know if Warren cannot hear me, but I wanted him to talk about that. That regardless of its white vigilante justice or its street justice in Black communities, people are too comfortable with taking other folks' lives. People are too comfortable with pulling weapons and killing folks, because it's not about the justice. Go back to we talked about, me and Warren talked about the ethic and moral code. It's folks are too comfortable of shooting other people, and just like, hey, yeah, it's just like a video game, or I'm just, playing something, you know. Part of it, yeah, we're gonna disagree, we're gonna get upset. Part of folks are scared to take an ass whoop. There is no more fighting. But and like I said, those two things you just talked about, two different situations, but in those situations, folks were too comfortable with taking another life, and it was just like another day. It was just another everyday process. Chuck, see if you can get one to bring our last thing in, because we almost at an hour 30.
Hey,
Hey, Juan,
I
can you
wanted to
hear us,
try to
man?
answer this question real quick.
Oh,
It was a
Come on,
question that
send us.
somebody asked earlier. Somebody asked the question earlier about
Go
whether
ahead,
this could
send
be
us.
retried, whether this was the end.
mm,
I don't do a lot of criminal law, but I'll try my best. And CJ can follow up on this if he wants. But I don't know about in Wisconsin, but I'll just say in Mississippi, I think it's I'm not aware of many cases. I'm not aware of any cases actually that were appealed after an acquittal. Most of the time, when you see a criminal case that is retried, it's because there was a hung jury. And
mm,
so I think a lot of people may have a question as to whether this case could be retried, or whether the prosecution could appeal based on the judge's decision to dismiss that weapons charge. And I don't think they can in this case, because there was an exception to that initial rule where minors could not possess a weapon. There was an exception, which I believe is probably, if you're in Mississippi, they have people hunt with their kids. I think that's what that exception was. It allowed kids under 17 or under 18 or whatever to possess a weapon, as long as it was a certain length. And so based on that, I don't think that the prosecution will appeal on that issue. And as of right now, I'm not aware of any appealable issues that they have. They could make an argument that the judge erred in allowing the victims to be called rioters and looters, but not allowing a certain language, how people were referred to during the trial. But I'm not sure about that.
Okay. One. Floyd. Did he walk away, Chuck?
I think he's still there, but what we can do, we can go ahead, invite folks to tune back in on Tuesday and catch, your regularly scheduled episode of Nightcap Knowledge, where we talk about a myriad of things. But I'm sure that this will be one of the topics of discussion. We want to even thank the folks that don't agree with us, that are in our YouTube comments. And you're supporters of, the taking of a life. So thank y'all for the YouTube comments. Hopefully you'll get me some more, and then you can get me to 1 million views to where I can start making money off your weekend's comments. So we'll see y'all later.
Your ass. How about that?
All right.
And
Thanks, guys.
What'd you say,
For
Chuck?
sure, man. We'll see y'all soon.
Peace, y'all.
Peace.